Now, good evening or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. I am Jim Matheson, a professor at Harvard Business School, and it is a pleasure to be with you tonight. I know there are many of you out there that are serving in uniform or have served in uniform, and we have a bunch of veterans on the panel, and so thank you for your service. And we're really going to spend time tonight helping you think about the decision to not just leave active duty, but to transition to your next way of serving, your next career through getting an MBA, in particular an MBA at the Harvard Business School. So that's really the goal for the next hour, is for me to facilitate a conversation with a great collection of first-year MBAs, all veterans that are finishing up what we call the required curriculum at Harvard Business School. So we're going to dive into that in a minute. I made my transition from active duty. I was a US Navy F-14, F-18 pilot, and that was in the last century. Actually, it was the last millennium. So it's been a while. Late 90s, I was class of 1987 from the US Naval Academy and class of 2001 from the Harvard Business School. So I've been through this transition, and one of the real pleasures of being on the faculty at HBS is working with our veteran community, the Armed Forces Alumni Association, and some of the great students we have on. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the arc of the whole decision process. So the five vets that you see in front of you have made that transition. They're now sitting in classrooms at HBS in Cambridge, Mass. And now they're on to other decisions about what do they do for their summer internship, what do they do with the rest of their lives. But it hasn't been so long either for me or for these folks when they were sitting in your seats, in your shoes, trying to make the decision about what to do with their next steps in their careers moving forward. So we'll get some good insights and perspectives from them. A couple of other comments before we dive in. First of all, we got a bunch of great questions from the registration, so we'll try to weave those into our conversation. So thank you for those. There's a Q&A function on the webinar. If you have something that's just a burning question, go ahead and pop it into the Q&A. And we getting some right now. Thank you, Jorge, John, appreciate that. We'll try to weave those in as well. And then tomorrow night, if tonight's not enough of excitement, enough of an HBS fix for you all, tomorrow night, I'm going to have the pleasure of leading a case conversation. And we'll actually have our veterans in one of our HBS classrooms. We'll be Zooming you all in to that, and we'll be going through a real live case conversation, which is the core way that we do the teaching and learning at HBS. It's a fantastic way to learn. We'll hear from our veteran students here in a moment about what they think about the HBS classroom. And I can tell you it's a fantastic and really challenging and interesting way to teach as well. So that's tomorrow night. I think Jane and the team have already sent that out to everyone. If you have questions, please hit us up in the chat box, but we'll look forward to hoping having you there tomorrow night. All right, with no more ado, let's turn to our panelists. And what I've asked them to think about is a lot has happened for them in the past 12 to 24 months when they were sitting in your shoes. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind because you come to HBS and it's just, you get pulled into this amazing environment and you get all these new experiences, these new friends, these new challenges. But I've asked them to kind of meditate and go back to when they were sitting in your shoes and thinking about, what do I do? Do I get out? Do I stay in? If I get out, what do I do? Those are all the questions I had. So we're going to sort of dive in to that question to start, and as also as a way for you to get to know our veteran panelists. So I'm going to go right down the list. Chris, why don't you get us started, and if you can remember back to your decision point.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So for everyone on the panel, my name is Chris Lohman. I was a Naval Academy class of 14 graduate, served in the Marine Corps for 7 years, so just 1 year shy of getting 100% of the GI Bill. I think for me, a whole multitude of factors really, played a part. Like one, like right here, right? Like I've got I have a kid, I've got a wife, I'm married. And so as I, finished my service, I think what really came down to is, what's best for me and my family. And the military lifestyle for me just wasn't really there anymore. So I looked for different transition opportunities, and everyone's going to have a multitude, whether that's, going straight into industry or, taking a leave of absence or going into, getting a higher education degree. And as I looked at them, there just really wasn't a better place than Harvard Business School. And that doesn't mean I didn't apply to anywhere else, but, I was fortunate enough to get into Harvard. And once I did, there just wasn't a question of the matter as to where I was going to go and what I was going to do based on the opportunities that it was going to create for me and my family moving forward. So that's really where I'm at, Jim. I appreciate the time, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks, Chris. And we'll come back and touch a little bit on the application process after everybody made the decision to actually lean into to come into HBS. We'll pick out some of the wisdom of that process as well. So Kristen, a little bit about your decision, and you're in a kind of a unique program. So maybe you can frame a little bit of how you applied to the dual degree.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. My name is Kristen. I was a class of 2013 from Boston University, ROTC, and then I was a surface warfare nuke in the Navy. And so for me, I knew based on kind of some of the lifestyle demands that I wanted to get out of the Navy, and I knew that I wanted to go to grad school. And so I was starting to look at job listings on what degree is going to be most advantageous for me. And I started to see a trend where it would always be MPH or MPP or whatever else, or MBA. And I realized that this MBA gave this insane amount of optionality in different fields as I wanted to move forward. And then, like you already alluded to, I found the MSMBA biotechnology. So Harvard has an MSMBA in engineering as well as one in biotechnology. Once I found that, it was really kind of no question. That was 100% what I wanted, because it gave me the technical and science expertise that I wanted to kind of delve into something deeply in combination with the MBA and that total optionality.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. And I'm sure folks know you can get a joint law degree, business degree. So a JD MBA, you can go to the Kennedy School and get an MPP, MBA program. Telling me my AirPods, are you hearing me? My AirPods are misbehaving here. You can also get a dual degree, as Kristen is doing, where you get an engineering master's and an MBA. So there's different options at HBS. What we don't have is we do not have an executive MBA program. A lot of exec ed, but unlike other schools, we don't offer an executive. So there's only really one way to get an MBA at HBS, and that's to be somehow part of a 2-year program. Awesome. All right, EJ, tell us your story.
Thanks, Jim, for the panel. I'm EJ Coleman. I'm a West Point class of 16 graduate, and I was a field artillery officer in the Army. I served 5 years, so my minimum time out at JBLM in Washington State, Joint Base Lewis McChord. And I was coming up on the point where, you're captain, you're getting ready to go to captain's career course. There's a long lead time to kind of command, and then a lot of staff in the near future, which didn't seem like the most exciting to me. And so I knew it was time to kind of pivot in my career field and choice. I had a lot of mentors who had gone kind of the military and then MBA route. And the ones I really looked up to had also gone to HBS, which kind of encouraged me to apply. And I knew it was the right decision when I got accepted. And like a lot of the senior officers that I worked with, when I told them I got in, they were like, well, obviously you need to go do that because there's more than one way to serve. But it seemed like a great opportunity, and just the option. I mean, as the other panelists already alluded to, the options that HBS opens up for you is just kind of, something that I hadn't experienced before, and I've loved the experience so far. So I'm excited to talk more about it.
Great, thanks, EJ. Christy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jim, for having me. It's nice to meet you all. My name's Christy. I'm a 2013 Naval Academy graduate in Annapolis. In the backseat of the F-18 Super Hornet, which I loved. And then I'm now in the MBA program and absolutely love it. Kind of similar considerations as Chris. So I have a 1-year-old son named Oliver, who is my light and is also a really big handful. So I think when I was trying to make the decision, I was also weighing, where is best for my family. And I think ultimately HBS is a very soft landing. It's a very warm blanket to wrap yourself in, and just like really opened my eyes to all the different opportunities that are out there. Kind of also part of my calculus when I was making the transition was the fact that my husband, who is also a naval officer, was getting out around the same time, really wanted to go to law school. So we were basically doing the Venn diagram, applying to schools in every major city and seeing where we overlapped. And Harvard was, by far and away, I thought the best option for our family, and the one that I was really, really excited about. So looking forward to talking more later. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy. Ori, last, certainly not least, tell us a little bit about your transition decision and story.
Of course. So my name is Ori McDonald. I am the co-president for admissions for the HBS Veterans Club. So if you ever launch an email over to the Veterans Club, it comes to me, and then I'll put you in contact with people within our organization who can help you decide if HBS is for you. My background, I went to the University of Mississippi. So for any non-academy types out there who think the door might be shut because you didn't go to academy, that's certainly not the case. There's a couple of us actually here. So there's a good path for that. I did 8 years in the Marines as an artillery officer. And then towards the end of my time, I think a lot of junior and mid-grade captains can kind of relate to the feeling of seeing the next like 12 to 15 years of your life laid out in front of you. Kind of like you're looking into a crystal ball, like you don't know where you'll be, but you know what you'll be doing. For me, that made me uncomfortable. But I didn't know what I wanted to do after the Marine Corps. So it was like a really easy transition. Gave myself some lead time with my EAS, launched a bunch of MBA apps, was very fortunate to get into HBS. And then as Christy said, it's a super soft landing, easy transition with the GI Bill. You really can't go wrong. And I've been tremendously happy with my decision to be here at HBS.
Awesome. Right. Thank you all for that first pass. So you kind of, there's some common themes, right? And I would say that it's easy for us, the current students, and probably really easy for me in retrospect to go, oh, of course, it was never a decision. I was always going to go to business school and always go to HBS. Even now, 4 years later, after I made the decision, I do remember I was more senior. So I was at 13 years of active duty. I just made 05. I was a F-14, F-18 pilot. I was going to go command a Hornet squadron. And that was my goal. And medically, I couldn't do that. So I really, for me, all of a sudden, my world got shaken up. But it was for sure a big decision, even with that, to leave active duty generally, because I think we all enjoyed it. You heard there's a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities inside the military. So the answer is not always just to get out, but a big part of that answer is what would you do next? And I think you heard a common theme here that HBS is just such a wonderful transition mechanism to almost anything you want to do. We'll talk about what some of those downstream paths are. A couple of things in the Q&A I want to just highlight. So there's a set of folks who are asking about the case conversation tomorrow night. If you could put your email in the Q&A, and Jane's going to make sure that we get some information out. We got a lot of folks signed up for tomorrow night, but I think we can probably fit some more folks because it is Zoom. And then there's a couple of really great questions about being a veteran in the application process. We'll come to that in a minute. But in general, every HBS class has about 4% veterans. And so the HBS classes are pretty large. So the RC class that these 5 folks are in has 1,060 students in it. So it's the biggest first-year HBS class we've ever had. That's partly a function of COVID. But if you do the math, basically something like 40 or 50 students in every class are veterans. So HBS has a long and really positive and storied history working with the U.S. military and Department of Defense. And so there's it's a very veteran-friendly, really veteran-leaning school. Not all MBA programs are as friendly as HBS, but I think most certainly would say that. And there's a great question about enlisted versus officer. So most of all of us here came from the officer corps, but we definitely have a few select prior enlisteds. Love that. Of course, you need a college degree to come to HBS. But we have currently in the joint Kennedy School MBA program a special operator from the SEAL community who's prior enlisted. And we've had a couple of folks that come out of the Special Forces community in particular. So there's definitely room for that. And I think that would be a real standout application. And the other thing you'll see, I think, from successful veteran applicants is service not so much mattering, but that people did real things like operational experience, leadership experience, especially folks that are post 9/11 veterans, combat veterans, all those type of experiences really help you stand out because it adds a nice additional complexion to the classroom where you have a lot of other folks who've managed budgets and done consulting projects. What the veterans bring are real operational leadership experience in difficult situations. So the more of that you have, probably the more your application is going to stand out relative to other applicants and definitely other veterans. So let's talk about the application process. Let's go to reverse order real quick. What is the single best piece of advice you got that you followed that actually worked as it relates to, so now you've made your decision, you're in the pipeline, you're doing all the stuff you got to do to apply. Ori, what was the single best piece of advice you got?
So for me, the best piece of advice I got was to apply round 1. Anecdotally, I have no idea if that affects anything, but I I was told in no uncertain terms to apply round one as a veteran, and that your odds of getting in would go way up. And so I made it happen. I applied round one, ended up here. And so I have to believe that that was true. And so that's my advice to a lot of veterans as well, is to apply in round one.
Got it. Christy?
I would like to underline service to school. By far and away, probably a lot of y'all have heard of it. If you haven't, it's veterans who are usually recent or current MBA students. I think they also do it for law school, and they'll do application reviews. They'll review your personal statements. Mine was really helpful, did mock interviews with me. Really an incredible service. I think he looked at like 16 drafts of my resume. Very patient soul. Service to school, give it a quick Google, thought it was really helpful.
That's awesome. I will tell you, we're so much more squared away, thanks to Jane and the team and the current students. We just started the Armed Forces Alumni Association when I was at school in the late 90s. And I would say there's so much more support now. And so lean into it. And where he mentioned the FAA, Chrissy's talking about service to school, some really good programs. You should really get the help because it's there for you. EJ.
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice I got was be prepared to retake the GMAT or GRE. Know your strengths, know the difference between the tests, and play to that, which is something that I definitely had to do. I took both tests multiple times, but just be prepared to take it. So start it early and get a few reps in it. And then once it's done, you can focus on the rest of the application, which is really the meat of it.
Got it. Kristen.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was don't self-select out. So I'll very specifically say that to all the women that are on the call. And I think there's other groups that need to hear that as well. But a lot of us think that because we don't align with the traditional business school path, that we don't deserve to be there. And I think that just knowing that you do deserve to be there and that you owe it to yourself to do the steps and take the time, it's literally free. All it costs is some of your time. And so don't self-select out and go for it.
Yeah, Kristen, I love that. I mean, approaching 40% of each class are female. So the female veterans and just our female students do amazingly well. So there's a lot of diversity. We have 40% international. So the student body HBS is extraordinarily diverse. And I love that. Don't rule yourself out. And I would say also, I think that the whole process of thinking about getting out and applying to school, it's a process. It helps you get clear on whether you want to leave active duty or not. And if you want to go to HBS or not, just because you get in doesn't mean you have to go. So I think the whole process of really examining where you are in your life and what matters to you and doing the hard work, I think is a really, really good step, no matter what you do. Chris, full circle back to you.
Yeah, I think Ori's going to hate me for this one because his email box is about to explode. But I mean, you have to reach out to the vets clubs at every school you're applying to. They have they're the ones that have gotten in. They have the insight. They can help you with your resumes. They can help you with your essays. And each school is different, to be completely honest, in terms of how they view things. Some vets clubs have actual say in whether or not you get in or not. Harvard is not one of those. Right. But we do have insights that can help get you into this school. So, flood Ori's email inbox and, you'll get connected with a veteran that can help shape your package.
So what about, one of the pieces of advice that I give to anyone that will listen, and I try to remind myself of it, is how you leave something is almost more important than what you did while you were there, right? And I know a lot of you out there are thinking, well, I'm in a job, my unit, my country, everyone is really relying on me. And that's true, we are. And it's sometimes really hard to give ourselves permission to make that transition. If it's time for you to leave active duty, there's other ways. I stayed in the reserves. I'm sure some of our folks here, anybody else is doing reserves? Yeah, so Chrissy, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, maybe just share how that's worked for you. I thought it was really interesting, very challenging. I certainly found it challenging to balance that, especially after I graduated HBS and went on to start and run things. But giving yourself the permission, if this is the time for you to go do something different, to go do that. But as the group reflects on your transition out of the military, was anything that you would have done differently or better in actually buttoning up that part of your life whether it's leaving your unit or just sort of being done with the military and then moving on. And then I think it was Ori and Christy, I'd love to hear about your reserve stuff. So EJ, Chris, or Kristen, any advice on buttoning up that part of your life?
Yeah, I can go first.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what it really comes down to is like, you don't want to burn bridges, right? Like, but at the same time, you need the space to ensure that you can, get your applications and get your resumes done. So it's all about balance. It's a balancing act as you close out your time. And then the other thing I would recommend is that, in trying to set yourself up for success for business school, look at the programs that are available for you. DoD SkillBridge is probably the one that I would recommend the most, where it gives you 6 months of your active duty time to basically go out and get some real world experience. Like making the transition into business school, it's actually kind of hard from an academic standpoint, because so many people are coming from private equity, investment banking, consulting, that they have, I'm not going to call it a leg up, but they have experience and exposure to certain things that you just won't have. So if you can take 6 months of your time and go try and land a Goldman Sachs integration program, or you can go try and land time at a venture capital firm to start getting exposure to some of these other things, it'll not only set you up for success from a resume perspective and transitioning, but it'll help you start to develop like fundamentals within the business, within the business framework sense that will put you on a path to success no matter where you go in life. So that would be my biggest thing.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Chris. EJ, anything to add, or Kristen?
Yeah, I would just say, I think one thing I did as I was already thinking about kind of applying to business school is I let my supervisor and kind of team know that, hey, this is what I'm thinking, to just kind of get their support and kind of buy in. Because that also helped with kind of the leaving aspects. You're never going to leave anything worse off than when you arrive. But once I got in, everyone felt invested kind of in that success as well. And those are still people that I have connections with today. So just kind of making sure you don't blindside your team with like an application to business school, like saying you're going to get out. Just let your intentions be known. And what I found is more often than not, people will be very accepting and supportive.
Christy, what's it been like in the reserves?
It's been good. I loved my time in the Navy, so I didn't want to quite throw in the towel just yet. And so I elected to stay reserves. It's been pretty flexible. I think it really just comes down to like open communication with your unit. I'm currently signed to the NOSC in Quincy, Mass, which is like maybe a 30-minute drive away. And yeah, I've just sort of like, when I've had other commitments, I've been able to work with my CO and reschedule my drills for maybe like days that I have off from school and things like that. So I think every situation will maybe be a little bit different. But yeah, it's been great.
Great. And or you two were in the reserves, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I'm in 4th Anglico down in Florida. I haven't found it to be too challenging. It's kind of a unit where you can work around the schedule in a sense. So it's not super strict. I've had to miss a few days of school here and there, but by and large, it's not a big deal. And I've appreciated retaining that tie to the military, because staying in the reserves in the near future is something that's important to me. So it definitely has not been a deal breaker. So if anybody is like considering the reserves, but thinks that MBA programs are not feasible while doing that, just hit me up and we can talk about it. But it's definitely, it's in the deck of cards to do that.
Got it. Let's talk about, you've been accepted, you're coming. You show up at HBS. If you were to wind it back, is there anything that you would have done to prepare better for that first class? That I had to take a couple of semesters of accounting out in beautiful Fallon Community College out in Nevada, which was great. I'm glad I did that. But is there anything you wish you would have done to prepare yourself now that you're a year into the experience? EJ, you're smiling. What do you think?
Yeah, I was on the core like requirements. So you get accepted, and then they give like 3 modules. It's like accounting, finance, and like leadership. I'm probably like butchering the 3 subjects because it's been that long ago. It feels like forever. But I would have definitely paid a little more attention to that core curriculum than I did, because it's not great. You do it at your own pace, and you're supposed to finish it by a certain deadline. And we all know like sometimes you might push things off when you're on terminal leave. And I probably could have paid a little more attention to accounting, because I've had to go back during the school year and kind of rewatch some of those lessons. So the thing I would have done is probably taken that a little more seriously and taken a few more notes to make the academic year just a little bit easier.
I second that.
Yeah. When they don't do it anymore, but when I showed up, they actually did like a 10-day program for, we called it diversity camp, but basically it was all the non-bankers and consultants came that summer, which was a great program. It was like the most fun because it was like the tales of the diversity curve, and they sort of got us focused. I think there's now a lot of stuff that they do online, as EJ suggests, that you can do online either through HBS. HBS online has a ton of courses that you can take, and there's just so much stuff on the internet now for you to kind of get spooled up. For those of you that don't know, there's a great website called Poets and Quants, which is just sort of the whole world of the MBA application process. So there's tons and tons of good scoop on Poets and Quants as well about the application process. And there's lots of services that can help as well. Anything else, anybody the other panelists that would do something different or something you did do that you're glad you did? No? Okay. I think we're so squared away. Other than EJ, everybody's doing great here at HBS. Let's talk about money. So most of you, other than reservists, are not working for a couple of years. You might get paid a little bit for your summer internship. How did you think about the financial equation? What financial aid is available? How did you just square the corner, opportunity costs, real cash, and how you managing to live while you're at school? Kristen, how have you thought about that?
Yeah, so I'm on 100% GI Bill with the yellow ribbon. So that means for, real talk, it's about a $3,000 check that I'm getting each month. With my living and housing situation, that covers a pretty decent amount of most things. HBS students tend to travel a lot. And so some of that is coming out of my savings, but that's a choice that I'm making. And then kind of the opportunity cost long-term thinking is, I actually heard somebody the other day talking about, on a lifetime graph of your finances, we're probably at like the ultimate low right now. We're at the graph minimum. And so there's some short-term exchanges that have to be made, but very likely they will absolutely pay off in the long term.
Other either programs or the ways that you thought about the financial bit or access capital?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I would say if you're transitioning, like take advantage of if you feel like you need to apply for VA disability, like definitely knock that out. The benefits at discharge program is phenomenal. I did not do that, and so I had to wait a considerable amount of time to get a rating. But it is a little bit of extra money per month that really helps out a lot. And apart from that, I'm in the same boat as Kristen. GI Bill, savings. It's kind of we're just trying to keep cash flows as positive as possible for the next 2 years.
Or as little negative, I think, is really what you're.
Yeah, I was trying to think of how to phrase that as least negative.
Yeah, and Kristen brings up the point, which is the HBS is like a frenetic social environment. I mean, that's part of it, right? You're coming here to learn accounting and figure out what you want to do with your life, but you're really coming here to meet other folks, and it's the connections certainly that make it rich and that help you achieve the things that you might want to achieve as you move on. Certainly been the case for me, but there's a lot of social dynamics and a lot of social activity depending on where you are. Julie, my wife, and I, we were married. We lived off campus, so we were kind of in and out of stuff. Some people are full on and actually live right there on campus, and those with families have a different situation as well. So we'll kind of come to that whole bit. Anything else on the finance? Chrissy, were you going to offer something on the financial bit?
Yeah, sorry, if I may, just the also possibility of using vocational rehab, or I think it's called now VRNE, if you have a disability rating, technically an employment benefit, but can be utilized to cover your school as well. And I think it's essentially the same coverage as the GI Bill.
Got it. So let's talk about the classroom. So we've gone through all this, we've made the decision to get out, we've applied, we've been accepted, we figured out everything, how to pay for it. And then you show up on campus and you start attending classes. And what was the experience like? So Chris, I'll start with you. Like, if you remember like the first week or two of being on campus, like what was the feeling and how did you kind of work through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit of being a vet is that we're so used to moving around all the time, and we're so used to just, joining different communities at different stages of our life, that it's really easy to kind of, I think it's easier for us to transition because we come in with a pre-established identity / group, which is the veteran community, right? Like the veteran community is there 100% of the way as you're making your move into Cambridge or whatever school you decide to go to. And I think that a lot of people have a harder time with that than we do. And so that kind of frees you up to be a little bit more outgoing. It frees you up to be a little bit more confident in the classroom. And you see that people, there are stark differences between those of us that have had to make these drastic changes in our lives over and over again. That it kind of enables us to, almost be thought leaders in the first few weeks of class, even when you don't understand finance or you don't understand accounting. And those are the ones that, I think most of us would feel, the least confident about, but it kind of gives you the opportunity to stand out in the first few weeks as someone who is used to new circumstances and new experiences. But that's just my experience. And maybe some people can echo based off that or have something different to say.
Hey, Kristen, let me come to you because you didn't just come to the MBA program, you got into the MS MBA program, and that's a really heavy duty. It's getting a master's in science and an MBA in 2 years. So, and I'm involved in that program, so I know how intense it is. Like, how did you calibrate yourself coming here?
Probably not enough would be the short answer. I had about 2 weeks between my last day in uniform and my first day of next generation biotechnology, which was reading a whole bunch of academic papers. And in that middle, I was doing the core classes that EJ was talking about. But I think kind of like Chris was saying, no matter what, you still have this community to lean back on. And so even though you're kind of feeling like you have your wheels spinning a little bit at first, you find it. And so though the transition may not go exactly how you plan, you still are able to kind of smooth into it over time.
Christy, let's talk about we get into the actual classroom. So one of the things that's particularly unique about HBS is the pedagogy, which is a fancy way of saying how we actually learn. And almost everything we do as a professor and as a student is case method. So it's Socratic. So essentially we sit in this classroom, there'll be somewhere 80, 90 students, sometimes smaller, but that's kind of your core group, the hive brain. And my job as the professor basically is to facilitate a conversation. I don't lecture. I try not to answer questions. It's all about facilitating the conversation among these 85 folks that all have different perspectives. But the common thing they have is they all will have, hopefully, prepared their case. And the case is 10 or 15 pages long. It always starts with this thing, well, EJ was looking out the window and trying to make a big, important decision. And then it frames all the stuff that EJ wishes he had known to actually make that decision. So, you literally, by the end of your 2 years at HBS, you do hundreds and hundreds of these cases. And you get, by this point, at the end of the first year, these 5 are getting pretty good at it, almost too good. They're getting sloppy, I'm sure, at this point. But go back to Christy, that first day in the section, the first case, like, how was that experience for you?
It was crazy. I think that was kind of the moment my mind got blown. So HBS does like a week at the beginning called Start Week, where you're just with your kind of essentially homeroom advisor. And it's kind of to get you accustomed to the case method. And it's a good welcome because I just remember sitting there that day. I think it was a case about Pepsi and the Pepsi CEO, and literally every hand went in the air with the first question of the day. And it was like a little overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. And then you hear everyone talking, and it's just incredible. Everyone is so smart. Like, I came to Harvard, obviously knowing everyone would be incredibly brilliant and like top performers in their field, but to see all 90 people sitting at your left and right with really intelligent things to say and interesting contrarian views, it gets really inspiring and maybe a tiny bit intimidating. But I think it has to come back to the vet value prop that we have operational experience, that we have leadership experience, and kind of playing to the strengths. So that was, just like a mental image that I think I'll have for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's been longer for me, and I remember it well. One tip I will tell you is that veterans disproportionately get cold called in the early parts of the section. So in your first year, your required curriculum, you literally are with the same 85 people the whole semester. You're in the same seat. You get to change twice at the holidays. So you're literally, I call it homeroom. You're like in your homeroom with the same people. And by the end of that semester, you know everybody's little isms, who worked for General Electric Company and who did this and who did that. Everybody knows the military people as well. But that you do get cold called early because the professors know that you all are good under pressure, and you're probably going to at least, may not have the most brilliant insight, but you're not going to break down under pressure on the first day. Chris, what about you? What was your first case conversation like?
Yeah, I think that there's like an initial hesitation, just to, you're sitting in this room with just brilliant students. It is a little bit intimidating, when you're almost 30 years old and there's a bunch of 24-year-olds that are coming from, Lord knows what, private equity, investment banking, consulting, and they do know things that you don't know. And I think that's okay, right? And so you really just, the first day is intimidating for everybody, and everybody kind of has imposter syndrome. And you realize very quickly that you do deserve to be there, right? Like the HBS application process, isn't, it doesn't send the wrong people to HBS, right? So you get into that classroom and you all deserve to be there. And so that's kind of what you realize very quickly. And once you do realize it, then your confidence skyrockets, and you realize that you are a contributing member to the case method, not just an active participant.
Ori, for you, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, you're in many days you're doing 3 cases. So you have a 3-case day, which means you had a 3-case night before all this stuff. Where did you find support? Like, how supportive were the classmates, veterans? Talk a little bit about maybe your what we called study groups. Talk a little bit about the preparation bit.
Yeah, so for us, we've actually formed I was a Marine, so we actually have like a Marine breakfast every morning. And so we've developed kind of a little support network in that sense. So we get breakfast every morning and we go over the cases, and invariably, like, somebody understands one of the cases better than the others. And so we kind of do a little teaching there right before class. And it really helps just get it fresh on your mind before you walk into the classroom and talk about something that you probably don't really know anything about. And so it's been really great, and it's been really nice to have that sense of community from the military carry over to HBS and support those, service members while we're in school and right before we get to class. So that's been a good, it'll be a good memory when it's in the past.
Got it. With all Marines, I'm wondering who's actually doing the number crunching, Ori.
Well, we actually have an Army veteran who comes, who's smarter than we are. So it's
okay.
Rangers
Good.
lead the way. Yeah.
Got it. Any other perspectives, either on that initial time in the section or other support mechanisms that sort of have eased that the mind blowing? Yeah, Kristen, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've had several professors tell me that they love the veterans in the class because we answer the question that's asked. And so I think, although there may be, among that group of 90 people, there may be other people that have more experience, our ability to problem solve and our ability to communicate clearly is at sometimes unparalleled. So once again, just because you may feel like the weakest link in the class at times, you certainly are not.
Yeah, Christy, thank you. Come on in.
For the double dip, as we call it, but I just want to shout out the tutoring that is available through HBS is amazing. So no shame in the game. Pretty much everyone wishes they had a tutor by the end of the semester. It becomes like futures trading. It's like, oh, you don't have a tutor for Finn? You're missing out. So it's all offered through the school, completely free, unlimited as far as I know. And it's all through second year students, which is really nice. You're hearing it from basically a peer. So yeah, that was very helpful for me in kind of the transition.
Yeah, thanks for that, Christy. And Chris, I want to come back to you. It's, I'm teaching a course right now. I literally had this situation today where I'm always trying to push, take a decision. What are you going to, the HBSers are so good. Well, on the one hand, the other hand, it's and I'm oh, that's all great, but you got to make a decision. And it can always get on the veterans, as Kristen's saying. It's it may not be subtle sometimes, but they're going to take a decision and drive it to action, which is quite differentiated sometimes in the classroom, and also much needed out into the real world as well. Anything from the group of just about that sort of initial experience or support mechanisms? Start then turning to just how you started to open up your eyes to the opportunity sets. But anything else on that sort of initial academic experience? Okay. So the HBS MBA program is 2 years separated by a summer, and that summer almost everyone uses for what we call a summer internship. We heard earlier you can actually folks that can potentially do a pre-internship. I've seen folks and veterans use that really effectively to get even like 2 months in a commercial setting before HBS can be enormously helpful. But the focus really is the first thing that the students need to do is kind of get integrated, get into their section, start performing, and then pretty quickly, like October at the latest, all of a sudden the pressure starts turning on, like, what am I going to do with my summer? And that certainly connects to what they're going to do after they graduate, but there's a whole kind of mechanism, process, set of pressures around what are they going to do for that summer. EJ, talk a little bit about, like, how did you approach that? What support did you get? How did you make your decision for the summer?
Yeah, so I think kind of coming into HBS, a couple of my mentors were like, hey, look into management consulting. So going back to kind of like it wasn't a pre-internship, but they have summer programs before you actually matriculate in the fall to start for like the consulting firm. So I did that to help. And then HBS, thankfully, not every school does this, but they have a blackout period. So when classes start in August through October, like there's no recruiting. So there's not a lot of pressure, which is actually very nice. But then, as you said, once October hits, it ramps up. And I think there was the real test of kind of how do you balance your time? Because you have to prep for classes, you still want to do the social aspect, but now you have this kind of recruiting strain, which is more about meeting people, having coffee chats, trying to understand the firms that you might be interested in. And I think that the resources that HBS has, and then I also got like through the Armed Forces Alumni Association, were enormously helpful. Like we do retreats and kind of Armed Forces alumni events, and there you can talk to people who just went through that process, and they can they were able to tell me, hey, these are the events you really need to go to. These are the events you probably need to skip, and this is like where you need to probably focus your time as a veteran. And so I say for me, throughout the entire recruiting process, being able to leverage kind of the ECs or second years who went down the path that I was trying to go, and like trying to just getting that feedback and learning those lessons from them instead of having to learn them the hard way, I think attributed to my like actually attaining an internship early, which was a huge weight off my shoulders. So it's just a great support network.
Yeah, so EJ, you're going to Bain, which was one of the leading consulting firms in the world. Mm-hmm. Actually started in Boston. You're going to DC. How did you? Was it clear to you wanted to do consulting, or how did you think about that? I know we also have a couple other folks who are doing that for the summer, which is a great way to spend the summer.
I think it was definitely top of mind as I came in, and then throughout August, when you start getting kind of the briefings from CPD, that's our career professional development organization, and they start outlining these different avenues that you can go into. I did do some, a little bit of investigation into kind of search funds or entrepreneurship through acquisition, just so I can learn more about it. But from there, I kind of like narrowed in on consulting is what I want to do. And that's also after speaking to like a few different mentors who kind of gone through the process. So for me, consulting was always number one kind of coming into it, but it was great to learn about the other avenues that might be open to me after consulting if I decide to do something after that.
So Chris, you two are also going consulting. First of all, we all talk about like consulting and banking and all these terms did you know any of these things like 9 months ago, like Bain? Did you know what the heck Bain Consulting was, EJ?
I did via Google.
Okay.
One of the top 3 consulting firms.
Yeah. And so for those of you out there are going like, how the heck do you figure this out? It's like, you don't know. You come in, you're thinking, well, I can like make stuff and I can sell stuff, right? And then you all of a sudden come in and it's like this whole world just is like, wow. Speakers on campus every day. You got your classmates who are consultants and bankers, and so it's just this. It's like this hugely divergent. Your head just like explodes, and you got to figure out like how do you sample and decide what you want to do that first summer. So there's a whole process here. But Chris and Christy, how did you go through that? Maybe Chris and then Christy on the consulting bit.
Yeah, so I like what EJ said, and just make sure that you get access to the early, if you are looking at consulting, get access to the early programs that they offer during the summer. They are really important. But what I will say, obviously, so I've got a consulting internship this summer, but what I will say to that is a lot of vets are pushed to consulting. It's an industry where we thrive well because we solve problems. We have great communication skills, et cetera. What the Harvard Vets Club, the AFAA, is doing though, is we do recognize that there are other things that vets are good at, right? Like, and we over the past couple of years, the Vets Club has started making a lot of great inroads into other industries to include private equity operations, search funds. So don't think that you'll be limited by that just because three of us are on the panel are going to consulting. Like, there are a lot of really unique and great pathways out there that the Vets Club has made a lot of inroads into that will serve anybody looking to do anything moving forward. So that's what I'll just say on that, and then I'll turn it over to Christy for the other rest piece in consulting.
Yeah, not a lot to add. Just definitely agree on the early access programs. Thought those were really helpful. Yeah, I think consulting is a very, again, soft landing. For me, I've heard it described as like the 4-year versus the 2-year MBA for those of us who know we want to do something impactful and meaningful, but aren't quite sure what that looks like yet, like myself. So yeah, I think it's a good transition vehicle, and hopefully much more beyond that. But don't feel like that's all you're limited to. Plenty about friends going to other things.
Or you're doing something really different. EJ referred to it, entrepreneurship through acquisition or search fund. Talk a little bit about what that is, and that's becoming more and more popular in MBA programs. It's also a really good fit for veterans. But why don't you frame what that is and how you learned about it?
Yeah, so this summer I'm going to it's a private equity vehicle called search funds or entrepreneurship through acquisition. And essentially what a fund will do is they'll back a searcher. And so they kind of offload a lot of the diligence work for finding like a small to medium-sized company to buy onto a searcher. And they really like veterans because we kind of have this generalist approach. And we also know how to get things done. So we're very good at follow through and very, very detail oriented. I was really attracted to it because it was an opportunity to be my own boss, which is something I'm very, very much into. And then also it's a great opportunity to kind of get a private equity internship without having to go to a private equity firm, which may be a little bit more difficult for people from our background. So I'm really looking forward to the the opportunity to get into an investment fund and do due diligence and get into financial statements in the way that we're not super familiar with, but also kind of see this new vehicle for buying your own company as a 32-year-old and then becoming a CEO. It's a really unique strategy in investing right now. And it's kind of actually just limited to like HBS, Stanford's MBA program, and maybe like 1 or 2 others, but it's very small. And they select out of 2 to 3 MBA programs. And so it's pretty selective. It's a really cool opportunity and something I'm really looking forward to.
So Kristen, you're sort of still in the throes. You're kind of maybe more in the path that I was in, where I came and I was really interested in entrepreneurship. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I focused my time and attention on starting companies, and I started 2 companies at HBS, and then have gone basically on and done startups and venture capital. That was sort of really my focus. I will tell you that if entrepreneurship in some shape or form or startups is interesting to you, HBS is like 4 levels beyond where it was 20-something years ago. I mean, there's so much activity. That's the space that I teach and spend my time in particular around tough tech and climate and sustainability. But there's so much going on at HBS and in Boston. And I think that's true of many, many of the business schools, that if you want to come in, you're thinking you want to get exposed to entrepreneurship or startups, there's so many things going on. If you want to go and do consulting, there's so many different things happening. But Kristen, you're sort of in the throes of it now. Any additional bits, because you're taking a slightly different tack from some of the others?
Yeah, I think the last thought there would just be that there are different paths. I know on one of these calls a year ago, I heard someone describe the different paths as maybe like the highway, which they got on where they were going about 90 miles an hour back in November. And then I'm kind of in the jungle, like making my own path. And so one's not better than another, but just know that you don't have to get on the November consulting train. You can wait and find something different. For me, with the MS MBA biotechnology, There's about 10,000 biotech startups in Boston. And so that's what I'm choosing to go towards. So just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you have to do consulting. It's just one of the options that are available to you.
Right on. Appreciate that. I love that. The highway versus the jungle. I don't know what I now have to sort of put myself, I was probably down in the little tunnels under the jungle, probably when I was doing it. I want to thank the panelists for being here, but also, they're taking a lot of time here to also answer questions. So if you're on the Q&A, there's a bunch of stuff getting answered. So thank you all for doing that. Some good gouge flowing out there. There's some very specific questions still on the open side. I mean, the one thing, there's a couple of questions, like when you do the application, you got to write the essay, right? And I think HBS understands that almost nobody that's applying really knows what they want to do with the rest of their life, but veterans coming out, I think it's more about framing kind of the why you're leaving the service, what motivates you, what kind of impact you want to have. I think it's much less about that than about understanding, I want to go be a consultant, I want to work here. I think that's as important as this, what's compelling you and how you're going to impact and what kind of contribution you're going to make into the classroom and as a graduate of HBS. And one of the things that I particularly like about being part of the HBS community is, the mission set is all about developing leaders who make a difference in the world. I mean, that's the mission. And so it's for veterans, it's a really natural extension of the focus on general management and leadership. Yes, you can go deeper on different topics, but it's all about preparing leaders who are going to go make a difference in the world. So I think that's one of the reasons I think that veterans feel at home. So this is going fast. It's fun. We got about 6 minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about life at HBS and students, non-veteran students, because I think people have a perspective of what your average HBS-er is like and maybe what life is like. Chrissy, so you have a family. Talk a little bit about managing the family and your career and school and what your kind of community, your friend community looks and feels like.
Yeah, it's a lot. I won't lie and say it's easy, very busy. And I do feel like I've had to forego some of the social aspects just to prioritize being a good mom and a good student. As fun as the social stuff is, like I've told myself, like I'm here for a career change, I'm here to learn. And then the friendships I make along the way are like so meaningful, but they're gravy. There's an incredibly supportive community for families. There's a Crimson Parents Club, which I think is great. They have like lessons and activities for the kids every single week, and for the parents to all get together too, which is really nice. There's the Mom Bus group for any moms that might be attending. We get together like multiple times a month, which is really nice, and people that can understand kind of the unique, things that we go through. And I really just think in general, like HBS is a really supportive environment. Like my section mates are all really good friends. They all know and ask about my son all the time and like always want to meet him. And yeah, I just feel like you're really coming into a family with section mates. And I think it sort of eases that transition again to HBS because you do have like your unit built in.
Got it. And Chris, we saw your one of your family members really. What's it been like being a dad at HBS?
Yeah, I mean, it's, Christy hit the nail on the head. Like it's not easy, right? But then again, like being a parent is never easy. Like no matter where you are, like you either have a kid now or you have a kid when you're the managing director of a consulting firm, right? Like, so it's just something you work through, and you've got a great community of people around you to support you. And there's not been one opportunity at HBS where I haven't been able to bring my kid and be a part of the section experience. So if anything, I'm self-selecting out myself without no one at HBS is telling me that my kid and spouse are not welcome. So it's a great place for families. It's a great place to bring your family. And then you just figure out how to make it work just like you do as a parent in any stage of your life. So.
Kristen, how would you describe what has surprised you also about your HBS classmates, non-veterans? How would you describe them generally?
I would say I was just surprised at how incredibly kind and approachable everybody was. I had a lot of stereotypes in my head about like what an MBA student might be or how they are. And that's proved almost entirely false. Like it's just a really engaging and interesting and enjoyable group of human beings.
Yeah. And EJ, same sort of question, and maybe a little bit about what's the social life like without a family.
I think one thing that surprised me, I kind of want to double down on kind of what Kristen said, was I had kind of assumptions about the kind of non-veterans that would be at Harvard Business School, and much to my surprise, pleasant surprise, like they're much more amicable, very nice. And I've found really close friends here. And they also really value hearing kind of the veteran and military experience and perspective, because they know that we've been in a leadership position, which is where everyone is headed after HBS. And so they really like hearing about the stories and kind of learning firsthand experience and from a peer about what that's like, which I found to be very interesting. And then on your second question, the social aspect, I mean, you can be as involved as you want to be in the social life. Trust me here, because if you are, then every single evening you will be doing something. If you say yes to everything, which was kind of my philosophy first semester, and I've since backed that down just a little bit so I can sleep. But there's always events going on, and not just kind of like parties or superficial things like that, but also like small group dinners. We have these small groups called Evolve here, where you can get to know people very deeply and personally within your section. Just get to know them better on a personal level. There's a section retreats and events. There's so many clubs that you can be a part of. I'm signed up for like 5 or 6 clubs, and they all have events, the wine club, AFAA, and so on. And so I say the social, there's nothing lacking socially at HBS, and probably the most difficult decision is kind of that self-selection, as was mentioned earlier. It's kind of pick and choosing where you want to really spend your time deliberately, so you don't kind of burn out, which I think can definitely happen if you take on too much.
Yeah, for sure. Or anything to add just on the classmate or social or priority management front?
Now, EJ said it really well. There is no shortage of things to do here. Everyone is super welcoming. Anyone and everyone that has the same interests you do exists here at this school. You will never be short friends. But yeah, you have to learn when to tone it back. And my FOMO lasted like a week, and that's when I figured out that however highly I thought of my own endurance, I was not keeping up with the 25-year-olds anymore. Like as a 31-year-old, it just wasn't going to happen. So I've definitely had to like re-engage with how I evaluate my ability to stay out drinking all the time.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that well. I'm going to come for the sort of the final question, and I want each of you to think about this, which is like you're a year into the experience. I'd love to hear kind of is reflect on how the whole decision to get out, the application process in your first year at HBS, how has it kind of transformed you in a surprising way? Like if you really think about where you are now versus if you're sitting on the other end of this, like trying to make the decision way upstream, like reflect on how you've really been changed. And I want to hear briefly from all of you, but I first want to thank Jane and her team for making this happen. They're tireless supporters of the veteran community. There's so much to understand and to know, but there's so much support available. There's lots of great questions on here. The website, the AFAA, Poets and Quants has lots of good information. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things like where do you live and what do you do and all the tactical details of being here. I think if we just elevate, it's really about, as you think about your life and really how you want your life to feel and to be and the impact you want to have, decision is, are you better served to stay in the service or to get out? If you're going to get out, there's lots of great things to do. Getting an MBA is but one path. HBS is but one place you can get that. I think it's a particularly special place. I think it's a place where veterans are welcome and do really, really well. But there's so many decisions that you're going to make. And so I think we all wish you well and honor the decisions you're trying to make. And we're here to support you in that transition. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night for the case conversation as well, where you get a firsthand view of what it's like to actually have a case conversation and to be in the HBS classroom. So how do we think about like how you're different than you were a year ago? Christy, how would you frame it?
Great question. I feel like this past year has made me more reflective, less tactful, maybe more strategic. And a quote that we got hit with on our first day, we were meant to reflect on is, tell me what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And like Kristen said, I think don't self-select yourself out of it. Like if Harvard is your dream, go for it. It is mine, and my dream has come true. So yeah, sorry, that's kind of a lot of random thoughts, but it's been a really wild, reflective,
powerful. I appreciate
powerful
that.
year.
Yeah, thanks, Christy, for being here. EJ?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of being unafraid to kind of have very wild, or what some might consider wild or long shot dreams. After coming to HBS, seeing the amazing people that are here, whether it's our peers or our professors, and just the access to the wealth of information and personal relationships that you have, like you can do anything if you want to after coming here. And so kind of being unapologetic about kind of where I want to go in life, and letting people know, and trying to figure out how to get there.
Awesome. I love that. Chris.
I guess my advice goes back to, just where you are currently, for those of you sitting on the panel, like where you are currently, like it's not easy, right? Like when you make the decision to get out, like there's so many stressors, there's so many different things that are going to come at you. You're going to have to balance, your job with applications, and the application process, like unless you're just applying to one school, like it's hard. Like it's not, like I honestly thought that like one of the hardest periods of my life was the application cycle, because you're balancing so much and there's so much to do. Just don't be discouraged. Know that it's a grind. Know that there are vets that are in the program that are willing to help, and that the vet community just doesn't go away. And then just grind through it like you've been trained to do for so long, because the reward is that you get access to like a unique group of people that, can really help shape like the next 20 to 30 years of your life. So don't give in, like when the going gets tough, like just use your training, like grind, and the best is on the other side, my opinion.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Kristen, and then we'll go to Ori for the final word.
Yeah, I think the change for me is kind of in the theme of EJ and Christy. It's made me more ready to take big risks, because at least career-wise, your downside is all but removed. Like you are so covered. The worst case scenario has completely gone away in terms of career. So you're ready to take these big risks that you may not be ready to otherwise.
And Ori.
For me, over the past year, I've just really realized what a big, wide world is out there. When you're in the military, sometimes you can feel, well, you don't know it at the time, but you're a little bit pigeonholed. Like the world is very small when you're in the military. And then once you get out and into the school like this, you just realize how many opportunities there are, how many jobs people have that you have never heard of. And for me, that's been really eye-opening, and kind of echoes everyone's points about taking big risks and betting big on yourself, because it's totally possible. Going to a school like this establishes kind of a really high floor for, I think, where you're going to be for the rest of your life, which is a super unique opportunity. And it's one I've definitely appreciated about Harvard Business School. For everyone, I think you can see in the chat, I put the AFAA's email address. So if you want to know more or get connected individually, please reach out to us there. You can also get us on the AFAA website. So if you just Google AFAA HBS, it'll take you straight to us. Pop a question, or if you want to chat, into the admissions tab on there, the email will come to me, and then I'll make sure you get set up with someone who can help you out. So appreciate everyone's time.
Awesome. Ori, thanks for that. And thank you, Phi, for taking time out of what I think everybody now appreciates is very, very, very busy schedules. And I will amplify everything that they said. Time is a whole bunch, being now 20 plus years out. All the goodness that our panelists have shared about the experience and their own personal transformation is, I think, multiplied manyfold for me, having the opportunities to do a set of things in the last 20 plus years that I never imagined. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jane, again, for making this all happen. Thanks to our panelists. We wish everybody really great luck in sort of finding your right path, as Christy says, what you're going to do with this one wild and precious life. So go make a difference, whatever it is. And if HBS or an MBA program is the right path, we will look forward to welcoming you in Cambridge in the relatively near future. But we're here to support you. All we ask is that you pass it on to the next generation. So Jane, I think that will wrap it. So we'll kind of go quiet for a moment. And if you have any final words, otherwise, we wish everybody a great night or a good morning, depending on where you are. And maybe we'll see you tomorrow night.